What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Do you know what today is? Today is when Hebrew Israelism turns 131 years old. Today is the birthday of Hebrew Israelism, September 13th, 1892. That's when William S. CROWDY first received his vision, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. Except we're going to talk about it in a little bit of a different way. Let me explain what I mean here. I've got a brand new book, as I often do here in Street Apologists Live, Christian Urban Apologetics program, where we serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. And the new book is a children's book about William S. CROWDY. So I know there's going to be a little bit of glare here, but this is Will, the story of William S. CROWDY, an unsung hero. The back of the book says, Will was chosen to do a very important job. He is scared and unsure if he can do what he is asked. Follow Will on this dangerous journey as he makes a promise to deliver a message that will help people all over the world. Shout out to D New. Thank you for coming in. I know this is a last-minute show because I had it scheduled for another day, but then I realized I should just do this on the anniversary of when the event happened. So we are going to talk about the event here, but I'm just going to get right into this. This book is brand new, 2023, written by Ebony Baskin, and she also illustrated it. So, multi-talented in that way. And I want to share some of it here and see what our feedback is. This is fair use because we are reviewing this and we are interacting with the content, and we'll try to do so in an even-handed, open-minded way. I myself, of course, am a Christian apologist, and cover this topic, and I think it's important for people to understand this topic better. So here's the preface. Will is a narrative, loosely based on the life of William S. CROWDY. Fictional characters have been added, and some historic events have been explained for context. The sequencing and location of some of CROWDY's life events have been generalized to accommodate the pacing of the story in a child's attention span. CROWDY had numerous major accomplishments and played many roles during his lifetime. Attempting to name them all would be a great disservice to his legacy. The purpose of this book is to help children learn more about the man he was, help them to be able to relate to his humanity, to become inspired by some of his principles. I like those goals. Obviously, I don't know if I could agree with achieving it by looking at CROWDY, but I agree with the goals, of course. This depiction does not represent the views of any organization. It is, however, my own inferred translation of his life and how he may have been feeling at various times. The title of the book was not intended to minimize CROWDY and his spiritual works, but was selected to encompass his names, character, and purpose. Will is inclusive of Wilson and William. I'll explain that later. Moreover, it speaks to the will he had to spread the message of God's love and God's will for the advancement of his kingdom. So there's a play on words there in the title. And it has a quote by him right in the beginning, and it says, "There's no harm in doing good at any time." So this is important because this book is new. And one thing I appreciate about people associated with the Church of God and Saints of Christ, that's the organization that CROWDY began in 1896. One thing I do appreciate about them is that they're much more interested, it seems like, in history than a lot of the groups are, to be frank with you. And I think that is to their credit. I think more of the groups involved with this movement should care about the history of the movement and know what took place before them. And in fact, I think on this point, maybe I and the Church of God and Saints of Christ would agree, because a lot of Hebrew Israelites don't even really know much about William CROWDY. But yet, he's the first one who received the vision in 1892. And that's why, for 2 years now on this little channel, I've marked the birthday of Hebrew Israelism at 131 years old. Today's the day it turns 131. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Built for Speed. Thank you guys for coming in. Please comment and all that kind of stuff. So let's take a look here. I'll read the page, then show the picture. It was stormy the night that Basil and Sarah Ann prepared for their baby boy to arrive. The storm was said to be very frightening. Basil and Sarah Ann, however, waited with great excitement for their baby to be born. I believe that CROWDY's mother, she was a cook, an occupation which for a time CROWDY also had, and I believe this is in what would be known as slave quarters, when he was known as Wilson before he was able to escape slavery. In a small cabin on a plantation in Maryland, the baby finally made his grand entrance into the world. Basil and Sarah cried tears of joy, for their baby was healthy, beautiful, and strong. And then it defines plantation, a large farm with many workers that produces crops to sell. And I don't know if the exact house is still there for people to see, but I have seen images where people show cabins similar to what CROWDY would have been born in. So let's continue on here. When their cabin door suddenly opened, the happy new parents were saddened to see George walk in. George was a reminder of the hard life they knew their child would have. Well, you could probably guess who George is and what he does. The year was 1847. During that time, there were many African Americans who had been enslaved. Basil and Sarah were enslaved by George. This meant that their baby would also be enslaved. When a person is enslaved, they are taken and forced to work against their will. And that's the tragic legacy that a lot of this comes out of. And we'd better remember that. Continuing on. The boy looks strong. I'll get good use of him out in the field, nice and early, said George. He looks like a Wilson to me. Name that boy Wilson, he said. And then there's a little comment. Many enslaved African Americans were not allowed to name their babies. Their names were selected by their enslavers. Again, tragic. So it was, Wilson was put to work as a young child. He spent his early years milking the cows and taking care of the watermelon patch. As Wilson got older, George gave him other jobs that kept him working, day and night. Hey, what's up, Mr. Green? Good to see you here today. It's interesting to hear about your excursions in the late 90s that you shared this morning with Nate. Thank you for that. No joke. Continuing on here, reading from Will. Working out in the field at such an early age made Wilson very strong. Part of him wished, however, that he could run around and play on the plantation like the children that lived in the house. Wilson would often wonder why they got to play and he had to work. There's the picture and the next picture as well. Wilson was wise for his young age. He knew slavery was wrong and just couldn't understand how a human could own another human. Every day his parents would tell him and his siblings that God loved them, that they were great. When Wilson looked around, however, he didn't feel so great. I think this first part of the book is very good at helping children understand, children of all backgrounds, slavery at this time and how bad it was. And so that is an important lesson I think that children should know as part of history. So commending that element here. As he became older, Wilson grew angrier at how he and other enslaved African Americans were being treated. Every day he was forced to either starve or eat the scraps that George and his family had left over on their plates. Enslaved African Americans experienced very harsh treatment. They weren't allowed to learn. They were overworked, other times abused, separated from their families, and given very little to eat. I wish I could leave this place, said Wilson, while watching his friend Harry eat his scraps. What would you do if you were free? Asked Henry. Wilson pushed away his bowl. I suppose I'd starve to death, but at least I'd be free, he said. And they're having that conversation. So I think the beginning part is based upon historical truth, but some of the details may be a little bit fictionalized from what I understand. One day, while on an assignment for George, Wilson was confronted by a white man. This man thought that because Wilson was black, he could bully him. The white man and Wilson got into a fight. Wilson struck the man in self-defense and immediately ran away. Wilson knew that if he didn't run, he would be killed. Now, it is true that William S. CROWDY escaped from slavery. I've never seen the details, so I don't know if this part of the story is factually accurate, but he did escape. Yeah. Wilson ran for days. He hid near swamps and in bushes to avoid getting caught. He followed the wagon trails, which were headed north. Wilson was very afraid. There were moments he thought about turning back, but he was determined to keep running. Wilson remembered the stories from the Bible his father would tell him. He thought about the story of Moses and how he was all alone in the wilderness. Wilson felt a little like Moses. He was lonely, tired, and very hungry, but he couldn't go back. Every night while hiding, Wilson would pray for God's protection and guidance. God, if you help me, I promise I'll help somebody else. You know, it's interesting because I read a kind of an academic biography of what was a chapter in a book about the Church of God and Saints of Christ. And in there, they just say, we don't know a whole lot about CROWDY's religious upbringing or background, but we do know that he was associated, perhaps it seems raised Baptist. But other than that, not a lot's known. And then, of course, you can imagine that there be some similar experiences he would have that a lot of religious folks in this situation of that day would have. For example, the parallel nature of the plight of the Hebrews with those enslaved on the shores of America. And then it continues on with the asterisk comment here. During this time, the country wasn't getting along. There were many in the South who believed it was okay to enslave African Americans. There were many in the North who believed slavery was wrong. The country was divided and now at war. Many enslaved people would try to escape slavery in the South by running north. Some would make it, some would not. Now, again, to the author's credit, that's not really a bitter way to describe slavery, you know, and that's, even though I'm doing this and I'm going to disagree with parts, especially the claim that CROWDY is a prophet, I commend the Church of God and Saints in Christ, and I know some personally at some level. I'm not going to know details, anything like that, not the author, but they're very kind people, very open-minded, very fair-minded, and so, you know, you see that embraced here, and that's a good thing, because we see other versions and they don't look as good and they're not as helpful, right? And you guys know what I'm talking about. Continuing on here with the book Will about William S. CROWDY. Wilson made it all the way to an army recruitment camp where he was given several choices. He could keep running and hiding, hoping to not get caught. He could return to the plantation and face his fate, or he could join the war. So what's the war? This is the Civil War. No, the author describes it. Civil War was fought between the states in the southern part of the country and the North. The war began over slavery. The North was against slavery and needed a big army to fight the South. Enslavers were given money in exchange for the freedom of the African Americans they enslaved so that they could fight in the war. This caused many enslaved people in the South to escape and run north. So he's in Maryland running, but he was still enslaved in Maryland. That's in the North, people. Wilson decided to join the war. When asked what his name was, he chose to change it. My name is William CROWDY. So he was raised as Wilson, but this is sort of a new beginning. And so now he is William CROWDY. That's when he was known as William CROWDY. Thank you guys for being here. I know this is the last second thing and all that. Please hit that like button. And please also share the link. Appreciate it. William, or Will, as he was also called, took his first job in the Army cooking for the officers. Will would think about how awful it was to eat scraps and would try to make sure the food he cooked and served was a delight. So that's a young William CROWDY there. Remember, his mother was also a cook. And so that's him there. The uniforms don't look exactly like Civil War uniforms to me, but the next one does. You'll see what I'm talking about here. As Will moved up the ranks in the Army, he often thought about the friends and family he left behind. Will fought his hardest. He believed that he was helping to fight for the freedom of his family and for us who would need freedom today. Will remained in the Army until sometime after the war was over and slavery was abolished. Abolished means put an end to something, to stop doing it. Now look, that's a pretty impressive bio so far, isn't it, right? For William CROWDY, I think that's pretty impressive and pretty commendable. Certain elements that we could say are a heroic life. But just because we can commend somebody on certain elements of their life doesn't mean we agree with their theology. You know? Shout out to Around the World in 80 Days. The mods will help you out. Once Will left the Army, he took a job as a cook on the Santa Fe Railroad. Now, this gets into factual information you'll see everywhere. What I mean by that is, if you do any bio research on William S. CROWDY, you'll frequently see that he worked as a cook for the Santa Fe Railroad. Santa Fe located in New Mexico, of course. But I believe, he would be on trains. I don't know if he's traveling too much on the trains or if he's stationed in one place, but that's what he's doing. Again, commendable, right? He enjoyed cooking and loved to serve others. The patrons not only enjoyed his cooking, but would always compliment him on how nicely he looked in his cooking attire. So that's William CROWDY, Santa Fe specials. What's he making there? It says jacks. I bet it says flapjacks. I wonder if he's making pancakes. Yeah, I see eggs in the picture. So he's making some eggs and pancakes. All right. I know somebody who, they always say pancakes. I think that's funny. Pancakes. All right. Yeah, Mr. Green. So I was agreeing with that part. So we, I try to agree with where I can agree type thing, And so I agree with you there, my friend. You guys see the comment and no disagreement there. And so far so good in a certain sense, right? But we kind of know where this is headed and we know what it's connected to. But I think things like this are important for history for everybody. Again, today, September 13th, marks, in my understanding, the birthday of Hebrew Israelism being 131 years old. And this new children's biography of William CROWDY is related to that. After he retired from the railroad, Will became the owner of a large piece of land in Oklahoma. I believe he made a stop somewhere else before that, but the author mentioned that there's things shortened in here, which makes sense for a children's book. This is going to be in a place called Guthrie. And if I had a budget, if I had a budget, I would go out to Guthrie, Oklahoma, and do a video talking about where William S. CROWDY first received the vision that he says he received there, September 13th, 1892. I want to probably do a show like this every year, as long as I live, or something like that. So this is a date I want us to remember, September 13th, 1892, as Christian apologists who care about this. All right. Here we go. Will became the owner of a large piece of land in Oklahoma. So he's changing from a cook as a primary occupation, it appears, to a more agrarian lifestyle. Will developed the land into a farm and maintained it beautifully for several years. During that time, Will also got married and had 3 children. So, hey, hooray for marriage and families. We're going to go ahead and give an applause for that. That's a good thing. We like that. And then a little party noise. And then all will be revealed says, hey, Vocab, you've been on these BHI and similar groups for years. Why don't you bring out the Freemason PHM connection to light? What is your agenda? It's out in the open now. I've actually talked some about this. It's not a very big emphasis of mine is all. I don't think that's the most important thing about them. And it's a little bit more in the past. And also there's some historical context. A lot of black Christians were involved with Freemasonry back then, and specifically Prince Hall. A lot of Americans in general were pretty big in the South, but like it was one of the few places besides the church where you could kind of have a legitimate kind of social standing without being mistreated, kind of in a way that was like an upper middle class experience. And so I kind of understand that cultural context because a lot of the founders of Hebrew Israelism were involved with that. And there are some odd things about it, no doubt about that. But I don't know, you're kind of, you're getting real aggressive about it, man. Just what's up, bro? Just, yo. He would now be able to settle down, have a quiet life, or so he thought. Hey, guys, just a minute. I'm going to play a commercial. This call is from someone from the church. I'm not joking, by the way. I want to see if I can talk to them real quick about a couple of things here. I'll be.
How you doing, everybody? Michael Williams from Lighthouse Publishing, Judah Nation Radio. I'll tell you about a book that we just helped print and publish. The Barack Obama versus the Black Hebrew Israelites. It's written by one of my friends, Vocab Malone. Vocab has done a great job of going through and presenting almost like an introductory manual to the Black Hebrew Israelite religion, and also giving you some talking points from scripture. This is a great book for you guys to read. If you guys are not familiar with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, it's a movement that is sweeping its way through a lot of urban churches, as well as a lot of urban ministries. We are called to, at all costs, to preach the word, defend the gospel by counteracting. Get the book if you're into apologetics. Get the book if you're into defending the gospel. And also if you're involved in any type of urban ministry where you see this going around, get informed about it so that you can really counteract it by having a little bit of knowledge before it, because you can't argue against something that you don't know about. Now, so you definitely want to get this. It's about 140 pages. I admonish you guys to get this book. You can order it at the website listed below. You can also look up vocab on all of the social media networks. Purchase the book. It's a great price.
Man, I hate these devils. Okay, it's live right now. I'm just playing commercials so I can talk to you real quick. But you can text me while I'm doing it. If you want to text me to tell me to add anything, I can do that. Just if you want to comment, because we're kind of right in the street apologists. We've been on for about 20 minutes. Street apologists. Yeah. Street apologists. All right, God bless you, brothers. Always good to hear from you. Oh, I wasn't unmuted during that second part. I know, guys. My bad. Yeah, I know. That's all right. We're back, everybody. That was our brief little break. Sorry, I didn't realize that it wasn't muted that second. Okay, Smoke Room was a couple days ago. I don't think I said anything wacky on there that he wouldn't have, wanted me to say or anything. So I think we're all good. But here we are continuing on. That was our little break so I could talk to somebody about what we're talking about today, someone more knowledgeable than myself, but that, just going to remain anonymous. So we're looking here at September 13th. And September 13th, if anybody gets into the study of Hebrew Israelism, they will immediately be drawn to that date because they'll see that's when William S. CROWDY was said to have received the vision that gave him the information that he would start preaching, and really the beginning of the movement. We have no one prior to that as far as anything that we can officially sink our teeth in. William Christian says he received his vision earlier, but we don't have much evidence for that, and there's some evidence that perhaps Christian was influenced by CROWDY anyway. Maybe CROWDY was first. We don't know exactly that, or at least I don't. Maybe someone in the live chat does, or someone could text me if they do. But I'm just saying that to continue on with this book. So here's the book. It's called Will, the story of William S. CROWDY, an unsung hero. And we are Christian Protestants. I'm an apologist. We're pointing out all the things we like about the book, but there's going to be things we're going to have to disagree with as well. And we just covered all the stuff that we like, but now we're going to get into the place we're not as certain about yet, okay? Let's say that with all due respect. That's my plan here. Shout out to everybody in the live chat, those who just came in. DL, I got love for you, and of course Nate as well. Okay, here we go. Will soon begin having strange dreams, and those dreams, God wanted him to become his messenger. So they kind of symbolize that with this right here. All right, here's where it begins. When God began speaking to Will, he didn't know that it was God at first. He believed it was his imagination, or that he was losing his mind. One day, God spoke to him in a loud voice, and Will took off, running into the woods. So that's the image, kind of iconic in the imagination as far as the historical reconstruction for this event, because he's in the woods with an axe, all the accounts do say. Of course, it's according to him. Oh, awesome. Okay, Bill for Speed. Yeah, I don't know how you can send it to me, maybe on Facebook Messenger, but I see what you're saying there. Appreciate your help. Appreciate Mr. Lattimore's help as well. Here we go. Once Will realized that it was God speaking to him, he was very confused. Why did God choose him to be his messenger? What did God want him to do? And it became clear. Here's the crux. Listen. Many African Americans, while enslaved, were forced to forget all about their ancestors, their beliefs, and their traditions. The world had rejected the truth about who they were, their value, their abilities, their place in the human race, and in God's family. This made them feel lost, and there were many who didn't know about God. or who had stopped believing in him. So that's what that says there, that part. And the tree and the axe is all present in all the retellings of this event. God wanted Will to go out to spread love and peace, to teach the truth about who God is, and to give hope to the entire world. So I just want to stop there for a second. I'm going to read the rest of it here. But from that sentence alone, and shout out to Prime Minister coming in and everybody else, anyone studying this issue should stop. Hey, how you doing, Alejandro from Chicago? Should stop and realize, okay, this is not what we should associate directly with One West type Hebrew Israelism. Yes, there's connections, and yes, if you have CROWDY, I don't know if you could have One West later on, to be frank with you, right? There is a connection, but theologically, there's some massive differences. Look what this says. Ariah could never write this sentence. God wanted Will to go out to spread love and peace, to teach the truth about who God is, and to give hope to the entire world. Now, continuing on here, God especially wanted Will to help African Americans to see how great they were in a world that made them feel like they weren't. Now, let's say we were reading Frederick Douglass's Bio for Children. We could agree with it from that perspective because we know that Frederick Douglass, who would be instilling the truthfulness of the Imago Dei and love your neighbor as yourself. So that's good. And, you know, even the Urban Apologetics book Pastor Mason edited, what's the subtitle of it? The subtitle is, of course, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. Okay? We're here. The challenge comes in with the specific message that the reason why you should feel this way is because you're actually an Israelite. That's the contentious issue, as it were. By the way, above my head, if you look at that, is logos.com/vocabmalone. If you go to that website and put in the discount code, capital M, Malone 25, you get 25% off any of the base packages that Logos has. But it's only for one more day. Only for one more day. You really can't beat it. This is about as low as you can get. I go to ETS every year, and they don't give much higher discounts than this, at least that I've seen. Now, I know they give this to other content creators. I'm not the only one. They have a program they do. But it's really great. So you definitely want to do it. So shout out to everybody. We are reading the book Will about William S. CROWDY, who 131 years ago on this date says he received a vision. And that's what we're talking about. Will agreed to become God's messenger. Soon he began going out speaking and teaching God's word. All right, so there we go. I have someone that I'm in communication with who knows a lot of information about the Church of God and Saints of Christ and William S. CROWDY. And they're sending me some messages while I'm speaking. So even if I'll relay them to at least get their perspective on it. This person says, I have a record that CROWDY's first vision was 1888. Well, I'd love to see that because, and I'm not trying to be funny, when you go to the actual like church websites for the church, they themselves say that the first vision was September 13th. So Church of God and Saints of Christ, Temple Beth El. I'm going to go down a little bit here. This is their bio entry on Prophet William S. CROWDY. That's how he's described there, all right? And then I want to show you what it says here. What's the date? While at Guthrie, Oklahoma, Tuesday, September 13th, 1892, the Lord God appeared unto William S. CROWDY in a vision, telling him that he wanted him to redeem Israel out of spiritual and mental bondage. So, I'm always open to new information, but the official sources, even that I see, all have 1892. Now, even if Christian was first, which we don't really know, he doesn't give an exact date, and it's very vague what he heard about. So I still count September 13th, 1892 as of now as the birth of Hebrew Israelism, at least the birth of the Church of God and Saints of Christ. Even if people don't agree with this, there's that. Now, of course, it was later on that it was incorporated. It was 4 years before it would be official. But as far as the movement began, 131 years ago there. Okay. So, just having a good, healthy conversation and continuing on with this children's book called Will. Let's read it. Ready? Many were inspired by his messages and began to follow him. When God had asked Will to travel to other cities to spread his message, however, Will got nervous and didn't want to. So there's that. This is important because this shows the very beginning of Hebrew Israelism involved street preaching. The very beginning of it involved street preaching, right from jump. You see that? My contact says 1892 was the 7 keys vision. Of course, he is right about that. We're going to talk later on about the 7 keys. He had been having visions before that. Well, I mean, even the book talks about something to the commenter here. It does talk about receiving some information before that maybe he should be a messenger. I think I've heard things like that. But I don't have any, I guess, what if he had prior visions, where were they? And what was the content of them? And what would be the source for that, Continuing on here, Will worried about whether or not his family would be cared for. If he went away, God continued to assure Will that they'd be okay. But he still struggled in his faith. God gave Will instructions on where he should go and what he should say. Still, he was afraid, so he disobeyed God. One day, Will got very sick and had to go into the hospital. So sort of it's like a Jonah type thing, where it's like he wasn't obeying and then had troubles because of it, right? Continuing on, while in the hospital, Will fought hard to get well. After many weeks of being sick, Will had changed. Not only did his hair change white, but Will changed his mind and decided that he would trust and obey God. Will remembered the promise he made to God when he escaped slavery. God had helped him, and now he had to help others. God healed Will's body, and Will kept his promise. So the accounts say that after he accepted his visions, his hair turned completely white. And I have a more detailed account that I'm going to look at in a little bit here. All right, let's continue on here. And just like I said, remember street preaching I said is from Jump? This is a full color page. And it's of William S. CROWDY street preaching. You guys got to understand. I know it's 2023 and I'm reading a children's book to you and it's a lot going on. Okay, we just, I get it. This is in the 1890s. We're going back to the 1890s. Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon in 1830. To put it in context, this is only 60-some years later after that. We're going back, man. Will began traveling from city to city, standing on street corners speaking and teaching God's word. Many people, both black and white, were inspired by his words and began to follow him. By the way, all counts do align with those sentences. God created us all different. We should come together and use our differences to change the world, Will would say. Spread love and kindness. God loves us and wants us all to be a part of his family. Now, I think that's a paraphrase as far as what they're saying he might have taught as part of his message. I don't think that's a quote from anything in particular, but it is true that he was bridging barriers with this early version of Hebrew Israelism, which is interesting, isn't it? There were many people, however, who disagreed with Will's messages. The Sabbath is Saturday. African Americans come from royalty. I thought I was imitating the crowd people for a second. I got ahead of myself. I thought I was imitating one of them, or I thought that was the line, but it's Will CROWDY, so my bad. Let me change my voice. I'm just reading his voice normal. It's not one of the townspeople who's throwing paper wads at him. Sorry, wrong voice. The Sabbath is Saturday. African Americans come from royalty, not slavery, Will would teach. This made many people upset. Some people would taunt Will. Some would even throw things. Asterisk, the Sabbath is a day to rest. It occurs on the 7th day of the week when believers take a break from school and work to focus on God. Continuing on here. All right. What do you think is going to happen, people? Well, that's what's going to happen. Now, how exactly did cops look in the 1890s? I don't know, but this is William S. CROWDY getting arrested in this book. Will was arrested over 20 times. Some people thought Will was spreading lies and were angry at how an African American could have so many followers. I don't understand why I continue to be arrested. I'm not doing anything wrong. I simply tell my followers to love one another, to follow God, pay whatever debt they owe, to not drink alcohol and not to do drugs. How is that against the law? Will would ask. Mr. Green says the cop looks sus. You think so? Let's see. What do we think of that? People's comments here, guys are funny. Let me see. Bada-boom, bada-bing, bada-boom, okay. No matter how many times Will was arrested, however, he didn't let anything stop him from spreading God's word. He inspired his followers to be meek and humble, to be truthful and kind, and to be charitable. An asterisk says to be charitable means to help those in need. Will taught his followers that they all had the power within them to do great things. He demonstrated this by opening several businesses. Be the landlord and not the tenant, he would tell his followers. By the way, good advice. And it's interesting because years later, people would kind of credit Elijah Muhammad and Nation of Islam with kind of almost inventing this. But if William CROWDY was saying this back then, you know, he was first as far as the use of religion to that sort of economic independence element, right? It's good, encouraging an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I hung out with Israel of God in Chicago, and they still do that to this day. Something that some of the groups don't do. You know, when you get to One West, UPK and GMS says you can just chill around. You don't got to work. You can work, I guess, if you want. I'm not saying they all don't work, but it's like you're allowed not to work. And it's like, nah, bro, come on. That ain't good. Not only did he open businesses that met the needs of the community, but he created jobs and opportunities to help people provide for themselves. Strive to be the lender and not the borrower, he would often say. Will also spread God's messages of love through his acts of kindness. He believed in serving the community. One reason why so many people were drawn to him was because he was always giving. So that's what they're saying about William S. CROWDY's message, and they're showing, you know, the entrepreneur spirit there. On Thanksgiving Day, Will hosted a free community dinner and served the finest food. We should always eat the best, he said. It didn't matter who the people were or how they were dressed. Will made each guest feel like they belonged. He made them all feel like royalty. If there was nothing given, there was no need for thanks, said Will. I just did a lesson on the parable of the great banquet. I encourage you guys to check that out. I'm going to put it on my channel later, too. Will continued to travel and open up many churches throughout the country. He also set up churches in Jamaica and Africa. Give to the poor and serve the needy. Love one another as God loves you, he said. Will kept his promises to God and continued to speak the words God gave him everywhere he went until his death in 1908. Will became a hand to the needy, a voice for the weak, encouragement to the discouraged, loved to the hated, and a guide to the lost. He was the world's teacher and is an unsung hero. Will help people all over the world to become better people and friends with God. His light shined brightly then and still shines brightly today. And that actually is the end of the book. So we've looked at Will, the story of William S. CROWDY, an unsung hero. What are our thoughts? What do we think? What is our perspective? What is our view? Now, I do have some other Hebrew Israelite children's books. Now, we're not looking at these. These have nothing to do with William S. CROWDY. I'm just showing you that it's kind of an interesting phenomenon that exists. There's way more, and I just have a few. This one is kind of like an IUIC type one. Going to the feast. You see, he's kind of got the IUIC colors there. Nate says, it's been a while since we've had story time with Uncle Vocab. You're right, it has. And boy, haven't we missed it. Might do a little bit more of that before we get out of here today. Now, let's take a look at some things. I'm going to need to share my screen. Just give me a second. I may have to host plus web plus PDF plus log off. Let's see, go over here. Open it up, go there. Let me see, go. Should I go there? Just give me a second. Host plus screen plus yes. Nah, we'll go right here. Is this the right button? Okay. All right. Let's flip some things around here. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. I want to bring up the screen. Okay. Da 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 da. Okay. All right. There's that. All right. There's that. There's that. Okay. I thought you guys would find this interesting. This book is available. Now, I imagine it's one of the things you have to order, but it is available at Barnes & Noble. I got it off Amazon. I got it shipped to me. Amazon. But it is available. See it right there? $40 pages, 9 to 12 years old, ages 8+. And then you go to Amazon. That's a wrong thing. What? That's not what I'm looking for. Hold on, just give me a second. There we go. This is another book I actually have. I don't know if you guys can see it there. I feel like the resolution is low on my screen. Is it just me? What's the resolution look like over where you guys are at? This is another book written by a member who I believe is an attorney of the church that William S. CROWDY founded. And I have never really covered it, but I do own this book. Now, this is fascinating. Look at this. Centennial Celebration Souvenir. Journal of Prophet William S. CROWDY's Revelation. I would love to have that. But $40? Whew, I don't know. Can someone who's involved with the church, if they're watching, can you tell me about this book? Should I get this book? Should I consider it? And this is interesting. Look, there's some other books by the church. This one's really fascinating. Cooking with the Saints by Mae Wimbush. Apparently, it's like a cookbook for the Church of God and Saints of Christ. You see that? Cooking with the Saints. So it looks like that's the only two books that are available as far as that goes. But there's our book we're looking at now. See it? There we go. And this, I've seen this before at the library in Harlem, but I don't have a copy of that, The Life and Works. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Look at this. The Appeal for Unity, the Integrity and Influence of Bishop William S. Saunders CROWDY. Oh, that's fascinating. Did I already get this? Let's see. How much is it on Kindle? It's $8. 54 pages. That's way too... I feel like if your book is only 54 pages, you shouldn't charge $8, with all due respect. I might end up getting it, but I'm just going to hold off for now, right now. It is interesting, though. Do you guys see this book's published in 2021? And then look, the Revelation of God Revealed. Now, that's not here, but I do have the PDF of that. I do have the PDF of that. Now, the rest of these I don't think are his. Now, this book I'm going to read from. I have this book. The hardcover is $194, but the Kindle is not as much. I don't remember paying that much for the Kindle, though. I don't think I paid that much for the Kindle. But speaking of that, let's bring up the Kindle, because I need to show you guys this. Because now what we're going to do is let's read what we might call the big boy version of the book, okay? We're going to specifically go to the chapter about CROWDY. Built for Speed says, Vocab, you know CROWDY's church is a YouTube channel. Yes, I do. And in fact, I'm glad you looked, by the way. When I covered this topic last year, I looked at their YouTube channel. So we should check that out. Someone drop a link. I think I called it Happy Birthday Israelism or something like that. I don't remember what I called it exactly. So here's a book. This is an academic book on Routledge. Church of God and Saints of Christ, Rise of Black Jews, Ellie M. Winia. And I thought it was a pretty good book. 1994 is when it's published. So we're going to skip to the section on CROWDY. You guys ready to take a little bit of a look at this? Let's see. No, that doesn't work. Let's mess around with the format here. All right, let's take a look here. That's weird. I don't know. That's strange why it's... I don't like the layout that we're looking at here. Whatever. All right, so now I'm going to show you a little bit more the CROWDY bio on today, because today is the day that the vision is said to be received by most sources that I've seen. And let's take a look here. You guys ready? Come along with me here. And can you guys even see it? Yeah. Okay. I've got a lot of this book highlighted. This is a book I've actually read several times, by the way. You may not know that, but that is the case. Okay. We need to go right here to chapter 3, which is his life. Okay. All right. We're reading this together now. Although I still don't like the format of this. It should be a different view so we can see this more clearly, don't you think? Let me see. What's a way to fix this here? That doesn't look right. There we go. There we go. Sorry, I know that people are getting frustrated, I'm messing around, but hey, it was worth it. I mean, I think it was worth it because it was looking weird, This makes more sense. Yeah, okay. Now we're good. Shout out to the live chat, everybody. Bro. Okay, bada boom, bada bing. Perfect. Well, now I'm just a little bit too big here. I've had this book for a while, and I've wanted to cover this for a while. This book, that is. I think it's fascinating and important for us to understand. So, here we go. Everyone ready? The life of William Saunders CROWDY. It was during this period of turmoil that Prophet CROWDY came and he said, now listen to this quote. This is something that William S. CROWDY said. And my goodness. I just got down in time to save us, Israel, from an additional 70 years of bondage. Therefore, from 1893, when Prophet CROWDY received his very first vision from God, to 1963, the signing of the Civil Rights Bill, Black people were enslaved in an Egypt of economic, political, and civil oppression. This says 1893. I thought it was 1892. Is it in 1892? I'm getting conflicting sources here. The website says 1892. Oh, because it was the next year. I get it. I understand what they're saying. It's the year after the vision or whatever. Enslaved in an Egypt of... Oh, do I have to move myself around every time? That's kind of weird. There must be a better way, but I guess I'll just move myself around for now. Hatred and insecurity and self-destruction. Oh, this is a quote from him, by the way. Let's see. What book is this? What's the book here? Oh, okay. Jesse E. Brown, Doctrinal Synopsis of the Church of God and Saints of Christ. So it's from a... there we go. It's funny you guys can't see it. They're weakened. Okay. Okay. William Saunders CROWDY was born in Charlotte Hall, St. Mary's County, Maryland. Now we're getting into the meat of it here. All right. Now we're getting into the meat of the discussion here. And you'll see. And the idea here is we read the children's book. Now we're going to kind of read a more full account. You understand what we're doing here? Okay, well, let's see what the more full account says here. I'm going to the next page. Sorry about some of the delays here. All right. Born in 1847 to Basil and Sarah Ann CROWDY, he grew up in the Chisley Hill Plants Farm, a slave plantation where his mother was a cook. His duties were those of a houseboy. He escaped slavery in 1863 and headed northwest. He changed his name at this time from Wilson to William and joined the Union Army. His role was that of a quartermaster corps officer cook. After the Civil War, he purchased an 100-acre farm in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and resumed his given name. That's fascinating, isn't it? So this is an academic book we're reading to understand what's behind the children's book. Little information is available about Crowdy's education. So it just says what we kind of don't know there. But let's continue on here with this. Crowdy's first religious experiences were most likely similar to those of other slaves at this time. It is unclear to what degree this influenced him, but one can assume that the previously discussed Jewish themes that were so appealing to the slaves had an effect on him. In Guthrie, so this is his time in Oklahoma, he was a member of a Baptist church and served this congregation as a deacon. The connection between these experiences and his later visions is, however, not clear. Around the mid-1890s, Crowdy moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and began working as a cook at a hotel owned by the Santa Fe Railroad. Also, actually, I wonder if he was really on the railroad. It says he's at a hotel there, but he's working for the Santa Fe Railroad. Okay, I see that. Interesting. At a church fair, he met Lovely Yates Higgins, whom shortly thereafter he married. They resided initially in the home of Lovely's mother, where 3 children, Maddie lay, who died young, Isaac and August were born. Shortly after the birth of their 3rd child, the Crowdy family returned to Guthrie to resume an agricultural career. Their farm income was supplemented by Crowdy's work as head cook in an English kitchen. Now, that's fascinating, right? Wonder what he was making there. And what's interesting is, the source for that is Business and Resident Directory of Guthrie and Logan County for the year commencing September 1st, 1892. So these are like public records. This is what scholars do. They search this stuff out. Isn't that interesting, though? So here it is, everyone. Here it is. Now, this is saying 1893, but I thought it was 1892. Now I'm getting conflicting sources on the dates. Now, interesting. To his first wife. No, I don't know, Walsh. I see your question. I don't know anything about that. I do not know, but interesting questions, right? All right, here we go. In 1893, while still in Guthrie, Crowdy had begun to act in a peculiar manner. His wife suspected he was drinking too much, but in fact, he was having the first waves of what were later interpreted as prophetic visions. Everyone following along so far? So he's married, he's a family man, he's at a farm there in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Now it's gonna get good. All right, here we go. Built for speed. Where are you getting that from? The source of that information? Because those dates don't match from what I know. Those are late dates. I don't know if that's right. He was actually physically frightened by the voices that talked to him, that told him what to do, and about the things which would happen to him if he did not obey. Now, that's similar to the children's book we read, right? It was many years before he learned that the voice was not of his imagination, but actually the voice of God speaking to him. Later, the precise meaning of these experiences became clear to Crowdy. So everyone following along so far? Let me throw this on here. Shout out to the live chat. Shout out to Walsh. Everyone subscribe to his channel. Definitely want to do that. Shout out to everyone watching. Crowdy's first coherent vision took place in this same year on September 13th while he was clearing ground for a new crop. He heard a loud sound that was similar to that produced by a large flock of birds. Amidst this noise, he thought he heard a voice saying, "Run for your life." On hearing this, he dropped his axe and cleared a trail into the forest with his mattock because he thought that he was going to die and he wanted to be sure that his body would be found. What's a mattock? Is that like a hand axe or something? Can someone look that up? M-A-T-T-O-C-K. Define it. Hey, Titans TV, shout out to you. How you doing? It's been a while. It's good to see you kind of back around. Yeah, let's have a discussion over there if you're interested. A lot of interesting things going on, and we could probably find something great to talk about. shoot, maybe do a hot seat type of thing. I could bring on one of my cohorts. I know you've had Adam Coleman on before. Just let me know. Contact me on Messenger or Instagram or Twitter or whatever you're on. If you could, my email is vocabmalone@gmail.com. But good to see you. So right now we're reading about the biography of William S. CROWDY from an academic historical book by Routledge. Walsh says it's like a tool for digging. Okay, well, I didn't know that. Thank you. He dreamt that he was in a large room. So this is the key. So this doesn't really describe it. You understand it's a children's book. But now we're reading the actual description. It's very important. I want everyone to listen closely. Pay attention to this vision because this has a lot of detail. And you're going to find out they're going to bang on the Christian church pretty hard here in this vision. And this goes all the way back to 1892, 1893. He, William S. CROWDY, that is, dreamt that he was in a large room and that tables were descending from above. The tables were covered with filthy vomit. Similar to Isaiah 28:8, where it says, "For all tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no place clean." Each table was labeled with the name of a church. Example given, Methodist, Baptist. So these are tables that are supposed to be where you're supposed to eat at, but instead it's vomit, which, don't think that's something you want to eat, right? Are you guys getting the gist? The biggest and dirtiest table was labeled Baptist, prompting CROWDY to resolve never to attend a Baptist church again. Just want to stop there real quick. Anyone see similarities between this and Joseph Smith's vision? What was Joseph Smith's vision? He goes into the woods in New York, forest type situation, Sacred Grove as they call it, Palmyra, New York. A lot of revivals, he says, have been happening in the area at the time. He is asking the personages that appear to him, which church should he join? The personages tell him, don't join any of the churches because their creeds are an abomination and their professors corrupt. Look at this vision. Fascinating. At one point in the vision, a small, clean white table came down with the name Church of God and Saints of Christ on it. Once it was firmly planted on solid ground, it began to expand, displacing all the other tables. This is pretty wild. Did you guys see in the vision? The name of the church he's going to start comes down. It's the only clean one, and it's so big, it expands so much, it takes the place of the other tables. Look what it says here. This was the sign to CROWDY that he was to establish a movement under his name, which would be the true church. Later in the vision, CROWDY received a set of rules and guidelines, now known as the 7 Keys, which he recorded on a tablet. The final significant element of the vision involved CROWDY's being presented with the Bible, which he proceeded to eat. By the way, in a second here, I'm going to switch this over, and if you're in the audience and you want to come on and talk briefly, I'll try to open this up, and I'll give you guys a link, and you guys could briefly talk to me about this. I'd love to hear people's opinions. Walsh, anybody, D-New, come jump on, and we'll have a little discussion at the end of the show. So get ready for that if you can do that. This signified, as in Revelation 10, 2 through 10, that the entire Bible, now what do you think it's going to signify? Basically, he's going to download the Bible, was written in him. After the vision came to an end, CROWDY simply got up and returned to his home. Primary source for that, given is Walker's book, pages 7 and 8. What current members of the Church of God and Saints of Christ will say, because I, as a Protestant, find some offensive elements in that vision. They'll say that all the other churches are connected to Catholicism. So for me, being a Calvinist, being a Reformed, understanding the Presbyterians were around at that time, I don't think it's historically accurate to describe these Protestants as being connected to Catholicism. They're not under Rome. They're called Protestants for a reason. People, look up the name Protestant. What does it have to do with? It goes far back, and it has to do with a resistance against Roman Catholicism. And so the interpretation of the vision is that the vomit was the Catholic influence or the Catholic web over the churches. At least that's what one member currently that I know would interpret it that way. Continuing on here, shortly after the visionary experience, CROWDY began preaching in the streets of Guthrie. He was amazed at his own knowledge and powers of communication. While the precise content of his preaching is not clear, it is safe to assume that he was beginning to communicate the vision that he'd received with respect to establishing the true church. The course of action that he took began with the baptism of his family, was followed by the baptism of recipient citizens of Guthrie and individuals in the surrounding area. Source for that, again, is Walker, page 9. Between the years 1893 and 1896, CROWDY heard voices instructing him to leave Guthrie and spread the vision of his church. He ignored these voices, and he believed, as a result, suffered a crop failure in 1895, which prompted him to heed their call. His wife thought that he was running off with another woman, and therefore insisted that he take their eldest son, Isaac, with him. Together on horseback, they headed for Texas as the world's evangelists. The book calls them that as well, so that's a common theme there. While in Texas, he preached everywhere he went. He was arrested 23 times, primarily because he was black. Thus, he extended his ministry into the prison system. So, listen to this. Now we've got the son, Isaac CROWDY, relaying something here. According to Isaac CROWDY, while they were in one of these prisons, a light came and opened the door of their cell. This signified to CROWDY that they were to leave Texas. Isaac was sent home to Guthrie while his father headed north to Chicago. And again, that is Walker's book. While in Chicago in 1896, CROWDY concentrated his ministerial efforts in the State Street region. That's where I went when I talked to GMS, was on State Street. There he spent a great deal of time actually preaching on the street. This resulted in the conversion of many people, a good portion of whom were white. Now, this is interesting because Chicago is one of the main influence centers for Hebrew Israelism later on. We get two key centers in American Hebrew Israelism. We get Chicago, we get New York, specifically, especially Harlem. This is interesting. He went to Chicago and did a lot there. Now, listen to this. During this time, he came to be known as the Black Elijah. Now, this is true. I've seen newspaper accounts that call him this. Think about how far this is. 1896. I want you to hold that thought because I'm going to come back to that. It was here that he received advice. Well, actually, let's talk about it now. There are reports that the name Black Elijah inspired people to the point where some of them named their children after William CROWDY, but they would name him Elijah. Specifically now, I've seen a report that indicates that Elijah Poole's parents named him after William S. CROWDY, hence why he was called Elijah Poole after the Black Elijah. Now, who is Elijah Poole? Does anybody in the live chat know who Elijah Poole was? He changed his name later. Elijahpoole, I believe. While you're getting that, COTD says that sounds like Joseph Smith's vision. Titans TV says, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, let me get this comment out here more so people can read it. I didn't know the Hebrew Israelites extended all the way back to the 1800s. Yeah, most people don't. That's what's so fascinating about this, right? It's very interesting. Built for speed, got it. That's the answer. Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad was originally known as Elijah Poole, and there are reports and accounts that His parents named him Elijah, being inspired by William S. CROWDY. Do you understand this? That means the founder, essentially, because Farr didn't do much except inspire Elijah Muhammad, apparently. The founder of the Nation of Islam's name is from William CROWDY. You guys following that? Now, these are some reports I've seen. I got to show you the primary sources some other time. And remember, I don't have a horse in that race, per se. But right now, we're moving on. It was here that he received advice from a drunken Irishman. I will not make a joke. I will not make a joke. I will not make a joke. I will not make a joke making fun of Irish people right here. I will not. The Sicilian side of me is coming out, wants to make a joke about the Irish here. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Got to let it pass. It's like when you got to go to the bathroom really bad, but then you wait and then it goes away. We got it. Okay. It was here that he received advice from a drunken Irishman telling him to organize so that the people that he baptized would have a structured religious organization within which they could practice their new faith. Also, according to the reports I've read, the drunken Irishman said, hey, you know why you get arrested so much? Part of the reason is, CROWDY, because you don't have an organization. If you were a little more organized in that organization, basically you look more official. They're not going to arrest you. Interesting, right? But this, I'm going to stop here for a second in all seriousness. What this shows is the Church of God and Saints of Christ organization, which is really the original Hebrew Israelite organization as far as the knowledge and information I've seen and have. Even in their beginnings, they have examples of positive involvement from other people. They're not stridently racist. And this is seen as a good thing. This Irishman had wisdom and he was sort of kind to CROWDY in that way, right? And that's kind of interesting, right? So this produces a different type of person because their organization's history has examples of positive involvement, Hey, shout out to Seldon Johnston. How you doing? Shout out to COTD. Shout out. And in fact, I don't think we're going to be able to get to it today, but James Grove is a bishop who's a white guy that CROWDY appointed. In fact, high-ranking bishop. So now CROWDY chose to do this in Lawrence, Kansas, establish. CROWDY arrived in Lawrence in the fall of 1896, November 8th. Recognized establishment date for the church. So I know that right now we're like getting into the date when the vision was first received, but the Church of God and Saints of Christ, from what I've seen, they tend to actually more celebrate what's called Reestablishment Day. And I think the idea is that Jesus's church, Christ's church, is actually being reestablished on the earth. Again, if that is not the definition of restorationism, I don't know what it is. Can someone please look up from a religious type dictionary? You got to make sure you're in the right place. Restorationism. And I need a short little definition because I'm going to drop it in the live chat. I don't want to do all that. But this is really kind of classic restorationism, where you have the reestablishment of the true church. And that date is given from Church of God and Saints of Christ directory, by the way. Lawrence, a city was established in 1854, provided a fruitful environment for CROWDY's ministry. This region received a large number of ex-slaves during the waves of immigration waves that followed the enactment of the 13th Amendment. Due to the fact that Kansas had been a free state, it was perceived to be a friendly environment. In 1890, Lawrence had a population of 9,994, 2,155 of whom were black. What percentage is that? Someone smarter, tell me. Someone smart, tell me the percentage of black population there. That's according to the 1900 census, by the way. It was also clear that Lawrence had a well-established network of religious organization. The first of these formed was the Unitarian Church in 1854. Two black churches, St. Luke AME and 9th Street Baptist, opened in 1826. In short, the community provided a successful environment for establishing organized religions, and there was a large body of black individuals for Crowdy to concentrate his ministerial efforts on. I'm going to keep on going here in a little bit, but this is where I'd like to see if you guys want to come join on. And I will not require you to give your name or show your face for this particular thing. We only have a few minutes left, but does anyone want to come on briefly and be a little guest? I'm going to drop the link right now, and if you just want to share your perspective or opinion or ask a question or maybe say something that you've learned about all this, then be my guest. Be my guest. How's it go? There's the link right there. Just a few minutes. You want to talk about this with me? We have a small base of listeners today. That's all right. Lord's will be done. But you are invited. So let's switch over to this. So what do we think of all of this, right? My friend who's involved with the Church of God, Saints of Christ, says the early church was distinct, that there was no color line. Now, I don't know if he means by that comment the early church, as in the very first Christians, back like during the book of Acts, or I don't know if he means the early church of the Church of God and Saints of Christ. Either way, it seems like that that's accurate, of course, with Acts, but then also with the early Church of God and Saints of Christ Church. Remember, he appointed Bishop Grove. Bishop Grove was a white guy, and it seems like basically he appointed him to take over after he was gone. Now, there were some problems after Crowdy died, but we won't get into that right now. So, if you want to know more about this, it's really hard to get a hold of books published by the organization, like their old school books. But one book that you can get a hold of is Chosen People by Jacob Dorman. Really a good book. The Rise of American Black Israelite Religions. It's published by Oxford, published in 2013. I would love to see him do an updated version of this. I would love to see him do that because I really think it'd be good. I think he has some pictures of Crowdy somewhere here. Is it in the middle? Where to go? But there are sections here on Crowdy, but oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Finally, I found it. Okay. Looks like it's chapter 1. This is our Red Sea. Exodus stirs Prophet William Sanders Crowdy and the beginnings of Black Israelism. Yep. Okay. So he's got a whole chapter, and it's a really good chapter. Does a great job. Dorman's a great historian. I'm always impressed when I read him. Very talented scholar here. And, since somebody wants me to talk about it, I will. This is from page 31 of Dorman's book. This is the chapter on Crowdy. He says this: importantly, for the rise of Crowdy's Black Israelite faith, Guthrie was a major center of Masonic activity as well as a launching point for African American settlers determined to create their own towns free of white interference or control. Guthrie claimed the title Fraternal Capital of the Southwest and became the center of Freemasonry in Oklahoma, with the Grand Lodge Temple, Masonic homes for the aged and for needy children, and one of the largest Masonic structures in the world, the Scottish Rite Temple. Moreover, in the 1880s and 1890s, Guthrie was not only a bustling territorial capital, but also the embarkation point for the settlement of all black towns established by formerly enslaved people who had carved out a modicum of independence for themselves on the Great Plains. He talks a little bit more about some other stuff there, but we can't go there forever. But it's pretty fascinating, right? Yeah. So Crowdy later on would divide the church into sections. And Crowdy basically was over the east, and Grove, a white bishop, was basically over the west. That's basically how it went. Let me see here. Let me see what this says. Okay, here we go. Let's read another encounter about the vision here, because we're talking about September 13th, because that's today. And take a look at it here. All right, this is page 38. Ready? All right, here we go. CROWDY was tormented by voices in his head for a number of years. Voices that frightened him, commanded him to follow their instructions, and threatened him if he disobeyed. According to his granddaughter, it was many years before he learned that the voice was not of his imagination, but actually the voice of God speaking to him. In 1892, almost 3 decades after the end of the Civil War, the 46-year-old CROWDY began to, quote, act strangely. In that year, the voices and visions became more coherent and more compelling. His behavior became distant and erratic. He often didn't know when people were talking to him, but would sit staring into space for long periods of time. Sometimes his lips moved, but no sounds came out, causing his wife to accuse him of drinking while she was not home and to forbid him from attending his Masonic meetings. Did you hear that? So the wife thought it was because he was getting drunk with the Masons. I'm sorry, that's kind of funny. Am I the only one that thinks that's it's a little funny? Let me see the source for that real quick here. It's chapter 1, note 77. Let's see here. What's chapter 1? 77. The source for that is Walker, Life and Works of CROWDY. Man, I want that book so bad. I want that book so bad. Any other comments? Anybody trying to come on? I put the link in the live chat. I feel like we learn a little bit about CROWDY every year we do this, you know? I'll keep on going for a little bit here. CROWDY was not inebriated, however, and had not attended his lodge meetings for some time. Rather, he understood himself to be hearing a voice of God telling him to establish, quote, the true church. Like many residents of western all-black towns, CROWDY probably lived in town but farmed land in the surrounding countryside. CROWDY's divine communications peaked when he was in his fields, clearing ground for a new crop on September 13th, 1892. Again, what's today? Does everyone understand why I'm doing the show today? It's September 13th that marks it. All this reading, I need some water. September 13th, 1892. And that's 131 years ago, right? Heard a voice telling him to run for his life. He fled into the forest, marking the trees with his mattock as he fled so that others could find his body, convinced he would not survive the experience. In the woods, he fell into a deep sleep and dreamt he was in a large room with several dirty tables descending from above, each inscribed with the name of an established church, and covered in filth and vomit. The largest of these was labeled Baptist. Then a small, clean table came down with the words Church of God and Saints of Christ. Later in the vision, CROWDY received a set of rules, which became known as the 7 Keys, and formed the foundation of a new church based on both Old and New Testaments. At the final part of the vision, CROWDY was given a book, which he ate in reference to Revelation 10:10. The book contained the 7 Keys, or Revelations of the Holy Bible, which included a ban on wine, ritual foot washing, and a version of the Eucharist, or Lord's Supper, a holy kiss greeting, and strict adherence to the 10 Commandments. At its start, the Church of God and Saints of Christ adopted practices that had gained favor among holiness churches of the Great Plains. Adopting Hebraic practices did not mean rejecting the language of Christianity, at least initially. The 7 Keys were the plan of salvation, and, quote, if they searched the scriptures according to its direction, they would not go astray, and their blinding eyes would be opened to the marvelous light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, end quote, CROWDY taught. So, fascinating. Well, I got your message, and I'd love to see that. You got some very fascinating sources. Yeah, you know who I'm talking to. Okay, well, guys, I really appreciate you coming on for a program like this. We have some interesting programs coming up